All right, let's get started then. So my name is Andreas and I work for Red Hat. I actually never worked that long for a company. I don't know what happened the last 7 years. The time was just flying past and having too much fun. Apparently I used to change jobs and companies usually every 2 years and things like that. But yeah, it's been really good. So today I'm going to talk about application innovation at scale, and it's probably not what you think it's going to be about, but you can tell me after. So usually, talks start with tell me what, they tell you what they are, but I thought I'd start off with telling you what I'm not. So I'm not smart, I'm not more experienced, I'm not more successful or better looking, at least not anymore. And I'm also not funny because I'm German, and no matter where I go, they always tell me Germans are not funny. And sometimes I sit down with my friends and they're Germans, right? And we crack up laughing and we cannot understand why the world thinks Germans are not funny. But anyway, so not funny apparently. I do have different experiences. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn on that, and you can check it out there. But I also love to get your thoughts and exchange. And I'm not talking about those like buttons on LinkedIn when I say something. I actually learn more when you don't agree with me or you have a specific different perspective on an aspect of what I said. I also run a podcast, so a Spanner in the works. I thought that's kind of funny, or at least an attempt of my side, right? And it's for business and technologists to share their view of the world. And at Red Hat, I look after cloud strategies, people, and change, and open source contributor. And I wish I had more time on the CLI because that's actually my happy place. If I do a lot of presentations, if I need a happy place, it's the CLI. Okay, so there is connected content today actually to that session. The hands-on demo is done by Paul Foster. He's just outside next to the coffee booth. And we also got our friend from IBM, Kong, who's got a demo to show you in his session, which is today in exactly 2 hours from now at 2:30. So this is from John Willis. I would never design a slide like this, but I thought I'll channel my inner John Willis. He couldn't unfortunately make it. But what his message is that there was a lot of goodness coming out of DevOps and the DevOps movement. But unfortunately, the enterprises or organizations, they tried hard to get that goodness and to basically apply that goodness of DevOps, but they failed a lot, or at least it didn't quite materialize the way they wanted to, right? And we've seen the DORA research, the report that talk about advanced organizations and the laggards of that. Okay, so then when this whole microservices and DevOps journey started, we had talks that talked about you need to be this tall to do microservices, and it was really about you need to have DevOps installed or as a feature of your development environment to actually make this happen. And I think we spend a lot of time talking about the self-service and the cloud infrastructure, and also a lot about the plugins that we had for Jenkins and how we set this up. But I think what we really missed a little bit was actually the reorg to DevOps, right? Because there's some reorganization in organizations necessary. And when you think about Conway's law, it actually tells you that the communication structures in your organization already predetermines what the architecture looks like of your resulting system. So putting teams into place before you actually design what the architecture should look like has an reverse or adverse effect, right? So then another news that I want to share with you is it wasn't Voldemort, right? So it was actually Harry Potter was most likely an IT ops engineer, and he got promised all the goodness of DevOps, and it didn't quite materialize. But what is it then that we're missing? And that's what I want to share with you today. It's looking at DevOps from a people, process, and technology perspective and see how we foster that as an enterprise capability as such, okay? So I've taken the DORA DevOps capabilities. They're all out there. You can see what the source is, the DORA DevOps research, and they talk about specific capabilities that you need for DevOps. So there's technical ones, process, lean product management, cultural ones, and measure ones, metrics ones. And those highlighted in yellow is what I'm gonna talk to you about today, right? Those are the focus things. We can talk about anything outside later after the session. Very happy to do that, but those are the focus areas for today. And so I'll start off with my which is my presentation MVP, which is about 50%, which is cloud infrastructure, because I think it's very important to step back sometimes from being code down in code, heads down in code, and basically trying to get features out, really think of what can we do from a more strategic or architecture perspective to actually make our life easier to establish that DevOps capability that we're talking about. And then I'll cover culture and work environment and lean product management. Sounds good? Let's do it. Okay, cloud infrastructure. So what I brought to you here on this slide is really different cloud deployment options that you have, right? So you have, or deployment options at least for cloud native applications, right? So you've got on-premises, that's mostly x86, and you have multi-processor architecture, single public clouds, multi-public cloud, all the buzzwords in Edge. And I'm gonna go through this a bit later. But on the left-hand side, I have a scale of consistency of experience, because I think in order to make application innovation at scale actually doable, you need to provide a consistent experience across different environments. Because we know all about the skill shortage, but if you have to hire different teams and train different people on different technology and re-engineer your processes, it'll be very hard actually, right, to do that at scale. So what I have then here, different levels of non-enterprise ready, entry level and enterprise ready. I don't know whether you can see that actually on thing properly. Oh, it's a bit cut off. Apologies for that. Not sure what happened. And then I have different offerings there. So I call the very topmost enterprise Kubernetes, then other Kubernetes offering software like Rancher, we saw SUSE today, or Tanzu, for example. Then we have the antiware services, and again, I attempt to be funny, I poke a little bit the bear. Those organizations that told us a few years back that there will be only public cloud, nothing else, right, have now come to the realization that hybrid cloud is the thing, or at least multi-cloud is a thing. And then we have those naked Kubernetes services as such, and the reason I focus on Kubernetes is because we're talking about cloud native, and you need to be this tall to do microservices, right? Okay, so now you can say, Andreas, why it's a DevOps conference, why are you coming up with hybrid cloud and all those things? And well, the writing is on the wall. Different research organizations, as you can see here, actually show us what that writing looks like. So Forrester on the left-hand side talks about application portability and challenges, complexity moving between clouds, even though you have Kubernetes. Then IDC talks about accelerating towards hybrid cloud. So 85% of the APJ banks will create an infrastructure strategy by coalescing on-premises and dedicated private clouds and looking at a multi-public cloud environment. And then you have IBM research at the bottom, which talks about by next year, organizations globally expect to be using at least 10 different clouds. And that's including obviously things like Salesforce and ServiceNow, SaaS type of environments, okay? So this is why we talk about hybrid cloud today, or hybrid multi-cloud as such, right? So let's go across the different options here in terms of deployment models. Sometimes you hear the term operating model, but operating model is just a bit of an ambiguous term around talking what people, process, and technologies, so capabilities you need to actually run your things, right? Okay, so we've got here multi-processor architecture. So far, only Kubernetes on OpenShift is actually supported on System P and System Z. Then we have single public clouds. That's where also the naked Kubernetes services are really strong. Even though I look at this slide a little bit and I think, well, to run Kubernetes in production, you really need a bit more than just the service itself, right? You have IAM, you have bucket encryption, you have security, right? All those things. So I'm not sure whether I agree where they are, but that's sort of where the strong point is of those services. But then as soon as you look at a secondary cloud, it looks very different, right? Because all this engineering, the skills, the processes, the automation you build around having your microservices run with one Kubernetes service is suddenly not applicable anymore for the other environment, right? And then the same, obviously, in multi-public cloud scenarios where you officially go into different clouds, hybrid multi-cloud scenarios where you have officially an on-premises cloud, could be a VMware farm, could be OpenShift as such running the virtualization, or you have hybrid multi-cloud hosted services, which is something that actually Paul, which is back in the corner, say hello, Paul, is going to show you outside on the booth. He talks about the OpenShift deployments and DevOps and GitOps on AWS, the ROSA service, Red Hat OpenShift on AWS, and then we have also Arrow, which is a native cloud service on Azure, which stands for Azure Red Hat OpenShift. And it's native services. They are built and deployed the same way you deploy any other service on those cloud environments. And then you heard our friends from SUSE talking about Edge. Absolutely. Edge is coming across any industry, right? We already saw many use cases today. It's not just a telco that talks about radio access network and the edge, the 5G edge use cases. There are production edge, there's operational edge, there's enterprise edge. There are many different deployments. What we made, however, a conscious effort to put our engineering resources on edge deployments, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about that. I show you what we've got in terms of making those edge deployments possible. Okay, so this is a fairly comprehensive spectrum of where your cloud native applications can run these days, or where you can deploy your cloud infrastructure as such. And that's what I really mean, and that's what I center today around when I talk about application innovation at scale, right? I said it already earlier. If you need to reinvent everything, your processes, you need to reskill teams and developers, operations, people to actually look after the infrastructure, which is different every time, depending on where you deploy it, it's going to be very hard. Just think about the security posture that we had in the session earlier, right? And then at the bottom, if you have an inconsistent experience, and the bottom it really is technical debt and undifferentiated heavy lifting. So now here's the thing, right? So this is obviously, I might be biased, right? But this is actually an approach you can take and apply it in your organization as well. And what you can do then, if you put metrics behind where you put those dots, you can actually measure technical debt, right? If you have a set of metrics that basically measure what's important to you and the weighting behind those, then you have actually a way to measure your undifferentiated heavy lifting or your technical debt in your organization. Because the difference between the OpenShift dot at the very top and any other dots is actually the distance or the amount of technical debt you would create if you have to re-engineer from one environment to the next environment. Yeah, makes sense? Okay, cool. So obviously, each requirement for each organization are different. So what I suggest is go deep. So the architecture looks very similar in terms of what a solution or cloud infrastructure can do. But what I suggest is do the double click a couple of times and actually see what's then supported in terms of infrastructure deployments, because it's very important to understand what's in what's required to run production workloads, right? Easy to install is easy to get started, but then what about all those day two operational concerns? And that's just what I looked at to come up with that comparison. But obviously, you can take that and overlay that with the requirements that your organization has, like disconnected installs. We've got that a lot in military environments or government service mesh availability, if that's something you need, right, or need to do. Then multi-cluster management, if you have edge deployments and all those type of things, okay? So as an example to bring that message home is really, let's go to FinOps, right? I've brought a FinOps example, and in the middle, those black boxes are some guiding principles around FinOps. And the FinOps guiding principle are cross-team collaboration across technology and business. Everyone accepts cost as their metric. A centralized team drives FinOps. Fast feedback loops, visibility and reporting, and business value of cloud drives usage. So that's sort of some guiding principles the FinOps practitioners in the room will recognize. And now to overlay that with what I just said before, if you have different environments every single time and you want to just deploy FinOps, and FinOps is just a placeholder, right? It can be your AI ops, it can be your SecOps, it can be anything. Then if you have different environments, then it will be hard to collaborate across different technologies. It's hard to reuse anything. You have to reinvent the FinOps approach for each environment, and it's hard to re-engineer and move workloads around if business value is low as such. But if you have this consistent approach across different environments, then it's easy to collaborate, right? You've got the same technology, the same skills, the same automation script, and it's also easy to repatriate from public or colo to on-premises, right? So that's sort of an example of why I believe, or the Red Hat view is that it's important to have a cloud strategy that will actually cater for different deployment scenarios. And it's actually not my words, right? There's a guy way smarter than I am. So Adrian Cockcroft, he has said publicly, don't do your own undifferentiated heavy lifting, and that's the lessons learned from Netflix. And you know, the Red Hat engineering and everything is open source. Obviously, if you don't know that, right, everything is in the out in the open, and you can contribute. But we're trying to take this undifferentiated heavy lifting away for organizations. Okay. So this is what we've done for a major Australian bank, and Kong actually in his 220 session will give you a demo of that. That's exactly what he's going to show. So we used several different clouds. We used IBM Cloud, we used AWS, we used Azure. We also had a OpenShift cluster running on VMware and System P and System Z. And what we did is we deployed applications across those different clusters. We took a cloud region offline, and then we synchronized CockroachDB across different environments once this cloud region came back online. So we had our management, our hub cluster. On the left-hand side, it ran OpenShift GitOps, Argo CD. It has Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management on there and single sign-on and Ansible automation platform. And that basically was the management cluster for the entire environment. And Kong's going to show you that what he's actually done in those GitOps scripts are available on GitHub as well. So this is just a showcase really that there's a lot of talk about this hybrid multi-cloud capability of several vendors out there, but it's working, right? So we've got this showcase tool up, and it's production ready, and that's something we are proud at Red Hat, right? Our marketing budget might not be that extravagant, and I've got Jenny in the back who smiles at me right now. She works marketing, does a brilliant job, but we are an engineering company, and that's something I'm proud of, right? So we might not be as hoo-ha about things that we have, but our focus is really enterprise compute, and that's what we believe is important for enterprises, because when we talk to our customers, that's exactly what they want us to focus on. So I talked about Edge a bit earlier, and this is just 3 examples. We've got a small footprint cluster on the graphic at the bottom. Then the one in the middle is remote worker nodes, and then single node Edge servers. And that's sort of the engineering effort that comes out of our focus on supporting Edge. And you see, again, advanced cluster management for Kubernetes. Then Red Hat OpenShift, obviously, and there's also advanced cluster security, which talks about, interestingly enough, exactly about those concepts that we had in the earlier session, which is all about runtime security on top of the DevOps and GitOps security support. Okay, so you get the slides. There's the video to the YouTube video, the link to the YouTube video. Then we've got, obviously, our booth out there, as I said already. Paul is ready to host you. But if you want to get started, then I've put on those slides a couple of ways to get started. So you can go to cloud.redhat.com, which is number 1. On the left-hand side, then you can go to hybrid cloud patterns. I like that actually a lot. So we have engineers that look at customer deployments, and they extract that as a pattern and open source it. So if you have a deployment on Azure or System P or System Z, then you can take those patterns and you can use those deployment scripts for your organization, get started that way, right? And the beauty of those is because usually you open source something and it gets out of date unless a company is looking after it. So our engineers are actually paid to make sure that whenever there's a new version coming out, that it's still supported, right? And the new version does not only look at OpenShift or Red Hat new versions, but also on new versions of cloud APIs and things like that. Then we have, as I said earlier, Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS, which is called Rosa. Then we've got our Events Hub, which invites you to join all those sessions that are displayed there. And then we've got developer.redhat.com and Azure Red Hat OpenShift. As you can see, right, there are plenty of things that help you to get started for free if you want to go check it out, okay? Okay, so that's my MVP done. I've got another 10 minutes. Can I just like a shake or nod? Does that sort of communicate what I'm trying to say? Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right. So let's go into lean management then. Lean management is all about, lean is all about cutting like garbage out, right? So waste, they call it waste, like waste of time, waste of effort. And so I just recently read the book, Making Work Visible, and I think it's really good. It's not a big book. It's 200 pages. It's perfect. It talks about how important it is to shift the mindset of organizations from flow optimization over resource utilization. I don't know, when I was like starting my work life, it was all about like how busy is a developer, how many lines of code is he or she pushing out, right? And when you looked at manufacturing plants, it's all about like how busy is that machine, right? But we are now in a different age. That's good for the industrial age, but it doesn't work really for the knowledge worker, because line of code doesn't really tell you anything, right? Because you can have a problem space that is super complicated and a problem space that is fairly easy. So of course the output will be fairly different. So the book talks about time thieves, and time thieves are, for example, too much work in process, unknown dependencies, unplanned work, conflicting priorities. I think we all know about those ones, right? Conflicting priorities and neglected work, tech debt. And what it advertises is really a visual management of things that going on across your teams. Because the problem is, in the knowledge worker space, our work is not really visible, right? We would close our laptops at the end of the day and we haven't really seen a lot of what you've done, right? And so this is a great way to utilize Kanban and just look at a wall and know exactly what's going on. And what those different time thieves allow you to do is to basically focus on the right things, right? If there's a lot of unplanned work, then you might have quality issues. Or if there's too much work in process, then you need to have a conversation about how can I limit that, empower maybe the product managers and things like that. And the other part at the bottom is team topologies. Can I ask just, has anyone heard about the book Team Topologies? 1, 2? Oh, here, okay, great, 5. That's awesome. So I think this is a very important book. We talked about, this second step. You need to be this tall to do microservices. On that slide, the second step was about reorg for DevOps, and that's exactly what this book is all about. So it basically cuts down different team structures. It cuts down different interaction modes, and it comes out with 4 different teams as such, right? Which is complicated subsystem team, an enabling team, a stream-aligned team, and a platform team. And then the interaction modes between those teams are actually only 1 out of 3, which is X as a service. I provide a platform as a service, for example, collaboration or facilitation as such. And then it also talks about what can you do about the Conway's law, right? As we said earlier. So there's an inverse Conway maneuver that books talks about, and it's very interesting. And it just makes you think about how to set those teams up and to restructure that. It also talks about the research done, how important it is to have long-lived teams over constantly putting things together, because you go through the storming, forming, performing type of scenario, and you don't want to make this a regular, obviously. So very, very good content on lean management. We actually do that as a complementary offering. So we did that for another large Australian bank. We walked in there. They had major issues in the fraud space about setting up environments, and the PCA stands for percentage complete and accurate, was at 2.53%, which is pretty, improve worthy, I'd say. And so by putting automation in, we at least put it up to 75%. I mean, there's still a lot of manual tasks involved, but you can see where you can actually go with those. With focusing the technology on the right areas, and that's sort of what we would do. We would come in, we do a process mapping for you, and then we prioritize with our customers what they want to focus on. The failure impact got reduced, and the resulting risk got reduced as well. The lead times have decreased, and the process times have decreased. So that's a pretty good outcome from that work there. And then we do also complementary DevOps capability assessment. I know there are like forms out there where you can fill that in and do it yourself. But I think what's missing always is this conversation. And what we would bring in is basically the global experience from other customers where we have done that work and what they have actually prioritized on and how they have solved this, because it's not a one-size-fits-all as we've seen in the keynote today. Okay, so with 5 minutes to go, culture and work environment. So that's a bit of a fluffy term. This is actually not from John Willis, but from Andrew Clay Schaefer. And he said, you can't lean, agile, safe, or even DevOps your way around a bad organizational culture. But I find culture also very hard to, like, what is it? I can't grab it, right? And what it is really, culture is to a group, a personality to an individual, and culture is expressed and witnessed in behavior. And that's sort of the most important thing I usually look out for, right? I can talk about, we've got an open door culture, and then all the executives have the door shut all day long, right? Which shows you that it's not an open door culture and things like that. So things you need to look out for, right? In how meetings are conducted, how people interact with each other, right? Are there water cooler conversations and things like that? So Ron Westrum, actually, he's done a PhD on that, and he shared his findings. He categorized 3 different culture typologies. There's a pathological, power-oriented one, the bureaucratic one, and a generative, performance-oriented one. So you can read it for yourself, right? So it's innovation and business agility are affected by those different lines. In the pathological, it would be low cooperation, the novelty is crushed, and information is hoarded. And the power-oriented, in the bureaucratic, rule-oriented one, you have medium cooperation, novelty is a troublemaker, the messenger might be short and things like this, and selective information flow. And the generative one is all about high cooperation, the novelty is implemented, and information is freely available. And that's exactly what Red Hat is all about, right? So because we do everything in open source, and that's why we think actually we should go out and show others how we do that and how this open culture is actually implemented. And the reason being because the research from Ron Westrum actually showed that companies with better information flow function more effectively. It leads to higher quality decision making, and problems are more rapidly addressed and resolved. And that makes sense, right? Because you don't try to hide anything. It's just okay to make, to learn together, right? And interestingly enough, we also do a complementary culture assessment, right? So this might be a tricky conversation in some organizations, but we've done it with teams, works on organizations, and it just gives you, it's just a baseline, right? I think always the most important bit is to start off with a baseline, and then you can focus on what you want to improve on as an organization. And there's a book available because people say, okay, Andreas, culture, I get it, it's a bit fluffy, what actually are we going to do about it? And so what you could do is, things like that. Jim Whitehurst, our ex-CEO, suggested that in the book. The book is also open source. You can download it if you're interested. Ignite passion, how do you do that? You do an actionable mission statement. For example, DBS Bank in Singapore, they want to be the D in Gandalf, right? That's something I can work with. Gandalf stands for Google, Amazon, Netflix, doesn't have an R in it, otherwise it would Red Hat have been there as well. But it's something as a developer or a person who works for this organization, I can connect with it, and it tells me what they want me to do. Do they want me to strive for engineering excellence, or do they just excellence, or do they want me to just like manually do things that are probably creating tech debt and toil and things like that. Then building engagement, understand what the difference is between morale and engagement. You can have a low morale but still be engaged. We've got like global public email lists where people tell the CEO very, very distinctly and without any room for a misinterpretation what they think about new policies being deployed. And I think that's a good thing, right? Because even if it impacts the morale, the engagement is still there. Then meritocracy over democracy, let the sparks fly. I think that's an important one. So, in meeting rooms, you can always say, great, and, and everyone nods, and then the real conversations happen in the hallway or the water cooler where they go like, oh my God, can you believe what we're doing? That's so stupid, right? So if that happens, then that's something you can actually address in your organization. Make inclusive decisions, right? Not quicker decision making, but quicker change. So sometimes if you involve a lot of people, so we changed the logo. I don't know whether you know this, right? The Red Hat logo has changed from the shadow man to this. Oh my God, I can tell you that is a book-worthy experience, because there were people in the organization that had actually tattoos. They had a shadow man tattoos. And so we needed to change the logo. You can just imagine how that went. But it's a lengthy upfront sort of process, but because you have those critical conversations in the beginning, you actually get the change done then either faster or just as fast, right? Because the crucial conversations are being had. And then catalyze directions at the bottom, complex, fast-moving world, not suitable for top-down anymore. I think we all know it, right? But the old way is basically trickling the information up. And Kevin Baer, the guy who wrote the Phoenix Project, he talks a lot about that the boardrooms and the translation up is all about analogies, right? And analogies are inherently low-fi, right? Low fidelity. So if you want someone make a decision for you, you need high fidelity. You need to have as much information as possible to make the the best decision available with this information. And that's why they talk about empowered teams, right? To make decisions on where the information lives. So that's where we're coming at from that direction when we talk about catalyze directions, okay? So now, how do we do this? We're all about hands-on and open source. As you know, there is a thing called openpracticelibrary.com, and it has open sourced and publicized all the practices you can do. And it's actually not that complicated. And you not necessarily need even you don't need a management consulting company for this either, because it's simple exercises where people would agree on a team profile, right? So, and they would negotiate and agree amongst the team members equally what the team interaction should look like be on time, be respectful, let others finish, and then they sign it all up. And simple exercises like this then allow suddenly the entire team to hold others accountable and say, hey, we agreed we start on time, you're 15 minutes late, right? Your Germanness has totally gone out of the window, what happened, right? So you need to be on time and things like that, right? And that's really a great set of practices that are wielding a lot of really good results for your organizations if you want to do something on the culture front. Okay. And with that, I'll point you back to Paul again, who will be very happy to show you the GitOps and Tecton approach to multi-microservices and multi-environment applications on ROSA, and our friend Kong at 2:20, sorry. And with that, I hope you had some fun and enjoy lunch. Thank you.